on today's edition of Stories from Real Life with Melvin E. Edwards. Our guest today is Andy Dietrich. Andy Dietrich was born in the Black Forest of Germany and moved to Alaska when he was 14 years old. His first book is called Play Stupid Games, Win Stupid Prizes, and is a mix of humor, heart, and the occasional ridiculous life lesson.
He turns to me and he goes, "Hey, are you Russian?" And I thought the question was a little odd. First of all, he didn't know I was German. Why would he ask me of my heritage? And I said, "No, actually, I'm German." And he starts laughing. He goes, "Man, this guy's got jokes." He's like prodding the friend next to him. He's like, "Hey, man, this guy's got jokes. Listen to this. Here, man. He said he was German when I asked him if he was Russian." He's like, "Oh, that's funny." and the joke went completely over my head. Right? I don't know why that was funny. I don't know why he asked me if I was Russian. None of this stuff made any sense to me. And he says, no, seriously, bro, are you Russian? And I go, "No, seriously, man, I'm 100% German."
This book will leave you smiling, shaking your head, and maybe even feeling a little better about your own misadventures. Let's join today's episode with Andy Dietrich.
You are listening to Stories from Real Life, a podcast by engaging storytellers for engaged story listeners. Here's your host, author and journalist, Melvin E. Edwards.
Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Stories from Real Life. I'm your host, Melvin E. Edwards. Thanks for joining me for the podcast where personal stories can have a global impact. This podcast has now reached 72 countries, and one of those countries is Germany, where our guest today, Andy Dietrich, was born. Andy, welcome to the show.
Melvin, thanks for having me.
I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, it'll be a good one. Or it better be. Watch me roll up my newspaper. It better be.
So Andy's book is called Play Stupid Games, Win Stupid Prizes. So my first question for you, Andy, is what's the biggest stupid prize you've ever gotten for something that you immediately regretted?
Okay, so this might be a little long-winded, but this will paint a picture of the shenanigans that young Andy got himself into. So the year is around 1990, right? Super Nintendos were hot things back then. Now, keep in mind, in Germany, we got everything a little bit late, right? Movies were translated. They took a while to get there. Nowadays, not so much, but back in the day, things were delayed a bit. So while we were going through the 80s phase, right, the rest of the world, or at least the US, has moved on to the 90s because it was the 90s, right? Super Nintendos took a little bit longer to kind of make their way around. But Super Nintendos were the hot thing, especially when you were a teenager, right? And during that time, during that age bracket. And so the story goes something like this. I decided to skip school, which was a common pastime of mine for, don't ask me why, just for reasons. I wasn't necessarily the worst kid back then, but it definitely wasn't the best either. I definitely caused my mom some heartache and headache. Innocent, right? Most innocent heartache and headache. Never got into like any kind of like major issues, but like dumb little things that teenagers would do. So while I was skipping school, I went to a department store. Just to browse around and waste time and just do what a teenager would be doing when they're skipping school. And they had the Super Nintendos out for display, and you can sit there and play the games if they had them turned on. If they didn't, then you kind of SOL. But I noticed that in one of the display cages, they had a packaging for a Super Nintendo game that was kind of opened up in the back. And if you looked at it through the right angle, through the right like the display cage angle, like I said, you could see the game hanging out almost like it's begging to fall out of its casing. So me, in my infinite wisdom, I don't know what drove me to do the next thing I did, but I didn't even have a Super Nintendo. But I decided, look, it's an easy grab. Yes, I would be shoplifting, but I decided there's no one around. I'm not hurting anyone. It's a big department store, and they're going to notice one game missing from their assortment of hundreds or thousands. So I reached in with my little, teenage arm and then grabbed the game out of its packaging, and I twisted it in just the right way. Think of like the Terminator 2 scene where I had to twist the gun to get the gun through the cage, right? Same kind of movement I had to do to get the game out of its display cage, and I put it into my jacket pocket, and I thought I got away with it. So I walked out slowly. If there's one thing that movies taught me is that when you commit a crime, you walk away slowly. You don't run. You don't want to draw attention to yourself. So I walk out, thinking I got away with it, and I did for the time being. And then as I kind of looked at the loot, the prize, right, that I've gotten, it was Mario Paint. Mario Paint was probably one of the oddest games that Super Nintendo had to offer. Now, the odd thing about this, the especially odd thing about this game is that you would have to have a mouse that only came with that game, that only worked with that game for it to work properly. Of course, I didn't know that, and I didn't take that with me, so that when I tried to sell this weird little Super Nintendo game to a friend of mine who did have a Super Nintendo, we exchanged money, right? He got the game cartridge, and the next day he says, "Hey, I need the mouse that comes with it." Now that put me in a really odd position because I couldn't just go back into the department store and ask for it nicely. I mean, I'm really stuck in between a rock and a hard place here, right? So as I tried to hold off the inevitable, finally said friend's dad decided to call my dad after I tried to give him some BS excuse about whatever. And after about a week or two, they finally had it. And so like I said, my friend's dad called my dad, spilled all the beans. And I remember being in the bathroom, being on the crapper, and all I heard were the keywords: Super Nintendo, mouse, the dollar amount, or sorry, the Deutschmark, the amount that was exchanged, right? And I knew I was cooked, right? And as I was sitting there on the crapper, there was this little tiny window that was just there for letting air out, right? It was just barely big enough for a cat to squeeze through. And I thought, well, maybe if I really sucked in my gut, I could probably escape through that tiny little window and maybe, draw this out for a bit longer. Anyway, so then my stepdad, he came to the door, he knocked on it, he goes, "I need to talk to you." Like, "Yep, you sure do." So I decided to, I sat there and I thought, well, I can sit here for another hour or two if I really wanted to and kind of delay the inevitable. But at the end of the day, there's nowhere for me to go, right? So I decided to take my beating, and that's the name of the chapter, right? Take your beating. When you did something, we've done something that deserves you getting punished for it, take the punishment, right? You apologize for the wrong thing you did, you take your beating, and you move on. So let's just say that I got my beating both psychologically and somewhat physically. We won't go into the details. If you want to know the details of what happened to me, you can read the chapter in the book. But definitely that was a direct consequence of one of my actions.
That's a stupid prize right there.
Yes, 100%, and I completely earned it.
So what can others learn from your own mishaps? And what are, in addition to that one, was another one?
Sure. So I think the general theme of the book is that you will do dumb stuff throughout life. And I think the value in experiencing life in the way that I think it should be experienced is that you go make mistakes. You do make some questionable decisions, but you also have to then pay the price and man up when you do something that didn't quite pan out in the way that you wanted to. For example, this is one of the more innocent ones. We went to a music festival many, many years ago. And while the group was hanging out by a grassy area to kind of catch our breath and to kind of relax for a bit, I decided to go get what I want to get, like a lemonade or something. So I got up, told the crew, "Hey, I'm going to be right back. No problem." I walk away. Got my lemonade. I'm walking back. As I'm walking back, there were these two rather heavy-set young women who were both sharing a box of fries. Now, me in my non-sober state, I thought it would be super funny and super appropriate to go up to them and go, "Nom, nom, 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 nom." Which I then did, just like that, with gusto. So again, in my head, it was perfectly funny, perfectly appropriate. It would be, they would all get a good laugh out of it. And as they both turned to me in disgust and both had still fries in their hands, as they looked at me with a look of, "Why would you do that to us?" It kind of came just like, the realization of what I did came crashing into my psyche. And I realized, oh my God, I just did probably the worst thing anyone could possibly have done. And I stood there, froze, and I looked at them with that bewildered look. And I said, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I just did. I'm sorry. I got to go. And I excused myself. So I mean, hopefully nothing bad came from it. But then again, this is one of those situations where, look, you think it's appropriate, you think it's funny. But if you mess it up, if it's not as funny as you thought it was, you freaking apologize. That's on you.
So do you remember what your mom said when she told you the family was moving from Germany to Alaska?
So about that, let me give you the paragraph version of how I ended up here today. So I was born in Berlin. My parents got divorced when I was too young to remember. My mother and I then moved to the Black Forest area of Germany, which is a beautiful little region down by the border of France, in the southwest area of Germany. And then at 14, we decided, when I say we, my mother and I, we decided to move to Alaska, of all places. Okay. From there, I spent high school years in Fairbanks, Alaska. I got some stories to tell from that as well. At 19, I joined up, did military service here for the United States military. That was an interesting little experience as well. I did 4 years in Camp Pendleton in Southern California. And then as I got out of that in 2004, I moved to Vegas, where I've been ever since. Okay, so that's the quick paragraph version of how I started and how I ended up here. The discussion went something like, well, my mother's always been very much in touch with her spiritual side, and she had this yearning, yeah, I guess yearning is the best way of putting it, to want to at least visit Alaska, if not to move there. Now, Alaska is a pretty far away place, especially from Germany, right? People from Europe don't often, migrate or immigrate to up in Alaska, right? So she went to go visit the state a couple of times, and she came back one day and she goes, Andy, one day I want to move, and get our stuff and then move everything we have to Alaska. And I told her, Mom, wherever you go, I go. So sure enough, when I was 14-ish years old, she's like, all right, are you ready? And I go, as ready as I'll be. Let's go. And we literally just packed a couple of bags and we left. And of course, we went to go visit. We came back a few times just to visit, but we haven't looked back since. And I must say, having made that decision to kind of get a reset, to kind of get a restart in a different country, in a different culture, in a different language, was probably the best thing for the both of us. So we've done nothing but thrive, in my opinion, since then.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
So what made you decide to join the U.S. military?
Sure. So I got a phone call. So I was very much against the military. I was not very government friendly, if that makes any sense, back in my mid to late teenage years. And then this guy called me up. I was living not by myself, but with a roommate, but out of my mom's house at 18, 19. And I got a phone call from Sergeant blah, 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 United States Marine Corps, blah, 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 the bravado, right? And he goes, can I interest you in a free college ride? And, all the other things that they kind of throw at you to kind of entice you to join. And I told him, look, man, I'm not interested. Thanks for calling. Thanks, but no thanks. And pretty much just hung up the phone. Well, it was cordial, but I told him thanks, but no thanks. So then fast forward about, 4 or 5 months, calls me up again, same number, same guy, same script. He's gotten promoted since then, though. So now he was staff sergeant so-and-so, right? But still the same, blah, 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 the whole bravado. And, just we went down his script and he asked me the same questions. And I was like, dude, look, I told you I wasn't interested. And he says, well, why don't you come down to my office? I'll buy you a cup of coffee and we can talk about it. So I thought, sure, I'll go down there. I'll get a free cup of coffee. I tell him no to his face. He'll take me off of whatever calling list he has. And it's going to be a win-win. So I go down there and the guy sold me on it. He didn't coerce me. He didn't, give me a load of baloney. He didn't blow a bunch of smoke. No, he told me how it was, how it is, what to expect, how long it's going to be. And the more he explained it, the more interested I was in it. And I think psychologically, subconsciously, I was looking for a way out. Fairbanks has a lot to offer, but didn't have a lot to offer to me, especially not at 18, 19 years old, trying to get a foot, trying to figure out how the world works. Fairbanks, Alaska is maybe not the most ideal place for that, unless you're into the whole, out in the wilderness lifestyle, which I definitely wasn't. Yeah, so I molded over, and my mom has been kind of up to that point been gently been pushing me into that kind of a direction. She even mentioned one day, hey, don't you maybe want to think about joining, say, the Air Force, get a college education, maybe do something skill-wise, learn a new skill, learn a craft. And I told her I'm not interested in any kind of military lifestyle. So when I told her, hey, I might be considering joining the Marines, she goes, oh, okay. So I think she was just as surprised as I was. And it took me about a month, and then I was shipped off to boot camp. So it happened pretty quickly. Everything kind of came to a close. The lease on my apartment was about to expire. My job was about to lay me off for the summer months. All kind of just came to a nice little head where it made sense. And to answer your question directly, the only reason why I joined the Marines instead of the other ones is because, well, he was the only guy who called me. Had it been, maybe a sergeant from the Army or an airman from the Air Force, maybe I would have gone, in that direction. But he was the only guy who called me. So here I am.
Wow. It's funny how life works out like that.
Yeah, 100%.
I almost joined the military same kind of way you did. I was a senior in high school. One of the recruiters called me and said, what are your plans after high school? And I said, I'm planning to go to college. He said, what are you majoring in? I'm going to major in communications. So he said, well, we have the most high-tech communications equipment in the military. If you join the Army, you could learn all this equipment, and then you can get a free college education.
And he wasn't wrong. He wasn't lying to you.
And I said, okay, that sounded interesting to me, even though, like you, I wasn't interested in the military per se. But he said, okay, I'll pick you up Friday after school. I'll bring you down here to the office. I'll show you around and we can talk. I said, okay. Mm-hmm. So Friday after school came and he didn't show up. He didn't show up and he didn't call.
That's
this
surprising.
is pre-cell phone. So this was a long time ago. Didn't call. So I had the weekend to think about it. And over that weekend, I thought, I'm not interested.
Okay.
I don't want to do it. If he had come by Friday, I might have done it. Mm-hmm. But then he called back on Monday and said something happened, and I couldn't reach out to you or whatever it was. Can we reschedule? And I said, no. I had the weekend to think about it. I changed my mind.
That's fair. That's totally fair. He gave you the out, and you took it, right?
Yep. So that was it.
Okay, fair.
If you had showed up, I might have had your story. So what a couple of memorable experiences you had in the military as an immigrant.
Yeah. So this may be... Okay, I'll just tell the story, and you can kind of, you can unpack it in your head any way you want to. So, I flew under the radar for quite a bit in boot camp, which is what you're supposed to do. You don't want to draw unwanted attention to yourself, right? You don't want to be known by name by the drill instructors, right? So just kind of fly under the radar is probably the best course that you could do. So about halfway through the 3-month basic training cycle, the drill instructors found out that I was from Germany, because of reasons. So since then, my nickname was Germany. So instead of, recruit Dietrich, I was Germany. Okay. So it's the last month of Marine Corps boot camp is field training. You go out in the field, you learn how to shoot, you do, like I said, field training. One of those exercises is the gas chamber. So we get all lined up, we get the training, how to use the gas mask and everything, right? And then it was our turn to go into the actual gas chamber and do the exercises, right? You take your mask off, you break the seal, the whole shebang that you're supposed to understand how that process works. Now how you should react in case there's a situation. So we're all lined up in formation, all rows and columns, neatly organized, and we all look the same. We have gas masks on. You couldn't tell one from the other, right? Because you couldn't see each other's faces. So then the drill instructor comes running over and he goes, Germany, where are you? Raise your damn hand, Germany, where are you? So I'm like, oh my God, I can already tell where this is going to go, right? So he comes, I raise my hand, I'm like, here, sir. And he comes running over and he comes over. So drill instructors wear these hats, right? They're called campaign covers. They look like Smokey the Bear hats, right? So they come out a good 3 inches, right, all around their head. So he comes over to me and he pushes the brim of the hat, right? He pushes into my temple, pushes me to the side by a couple of degrees, and he starts whispering. I say whispering. He wasn't whispering. He whispered in my ear. He goes, all right, Germany, we're about to enter the gas chamber. Now you'll know what it feels like. And he said it just loud enough for everyone around me to hear it. And of course, they all start chuckling, and I couldn't say anything. What am I supposed to do? Nothing. I just sat there and said, good to go, sir.
Wow. There is no way you respond to that.
There's nothing you can't say. Nothing you can't say, right? The other story I'll tell along the same lines. I don't mean to offend your Jewish audience. There's nothing malicious about my storytelling. I hope that comes through in what, how I explain it. But the other story I do want to share along the same lines. So I was stationed in Pendleton about 2 or 3 years in, and one of our company commanders, he was a captain, Captain Morrison, Abe Morrison, right? Good old, wholesome Jewish boy from, I don't even know where he's from, but good wholesome Jewish man, right? And he found out pretty early on that I was from Germany. So he would every so often use that as an excuse to strike up conversation and to remind us of our mutual heritages, right? And he's an officer. I'm enlisted. There's this gap, this divide, this respectful distance that you're supposed to have, right? You salute all officers, you call them sir, all that good stuff. So when he talks to you, you better listen, you better pay attention. So one time he comes over to my desk and he goes, Dietrich, I'm like, good afternoon, sir. What can I do for you? And he goes, you probably killed my ancestors, didn't you? And so, okay, so I'm sitting there, right, a young Lance Corporal, a young E3 talking to an O3, right, an officer captain, right? So again, I gotta On my right hand side was my shoulder angel saying, "You tread with caution. He's an officer. You want to piss him off too much because bad things can happen to you." Right. That was my shoulder angel on the right. And the little devil on the left said, "Yo, he opened the door, you stepped through it. YOLO," right?
YOLO.
This is before YOLO was a thing, right? But I'm pretty sure my shoulder devil said, "You play stupid games, you win stupid prizes." Okay? So I stand up to the position of attention, which is the way you're supposed to address an officer, right? And I said, "Well, sir, apparently not the right ones because you're still here, sir."
Wow.
Hey man, when you play stupid games.
I'm scared to ask what he said in response.
No, he knew that it was just poking fun at me. We had a good little rapport. We had a good professional friendship, and he definitely knew that I, on occasion, would fire back at him. And I think he enjoyed the kind of back and forth. But again, it was respectful as a comeback like that could be. But it was never unwarranted. So in my defense, he opened the door. I walked through it.
Or as I like to say when somebody does something, you throw it across the plate, I'm swinging at it.
Well, you know what?
Baseball reference.
Totally fair. Totally fair.
So is that what you mean when you talk about life being similar to Blackjack?
Okay, so that's a different story. Thanks for giving me the layup on that one. Okay, so this one is a little more introspective. So let me back up a little bit. When if you get a chance to read the book, you'll see that's sectioned off into two parts. The first is my silly stories. It literally is called Part the First, Silly Stories. And the second half is a little more introspective. I go off on some rants. I have some opinions, some unpopular opinions. We can talk about that in a second too if you want. A little bit more serious topics that don't fit under the silly topics, the silly stories topics. And one of them is the Life is Like Blackjack. If you've ever played Blackjack, it'd be pretty simple rules, right? You get a couple cards dealt to you, and then you make a choice. Do you hit? Do you stand? Or even if you want to, you can surrender, right? Some hands in Blackjack you cannot win. They're already lost before you do anything. Whether you hit, whether you stand, some hands cannot be won. And I think that has an interesting parallel to real world. There are certain situations in life that are just not. You will not come out on top. You just won't, right? The situation's already unfolded itself in a way that will not allow you to be victorious, if you want to use that term. And I think the best thing you can do is take the hit, take a knee, and try again. So that's how life can be like Blackjack. Some things you cannot win, you just got to try again.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So I'm wondering something because I've never attempted to crash a wedding.
Okay.
What happens when you crash the wrong wedding?
Okay. So my good friend Tyler got married, and he invited me out to be part of the wedding. Now, of course, as a good friend, I would say, as a good friend, you do say sure. And it was here in Vegas, so I didn't have to go anywhere. So I show up, and I quickly realized that, look, I know Tyler, my good friend Tyler. I've met the bride-to-be once or twice. I know what she looks like, but I don't know much of their extended family. I really don't know anyone that could or would attend this wedding. So go to this chapel that had a couple different waiting rooms or ceremony rooms, whatever you want to call them. There's a ton of them here in Vegas. I pulled up to the right place, but then as I saw people shuffling into one of the ceremony rooms or whatever you want to call them, right, the halls and whatnot, I decided, hey, this might as well be the one I need to be in, right? So I go sit down. You can tell people are getting situated. It's still a bit of time before they actually do the ceremony. Make small talk with the people around me, start making friends. Turns out they're from Australia, good people. They're here for the weekend, obviously here for the wedding. And we get to the point where we all take pictures together. We become best friends for the next 20 minutes or so. And then as I sat there for a bit longer, it finally dawned upon me, wait a minute, my friend Tyler, okay, he's white. The bride is Asian. Okay, we have a bunch of Australians here and a bunch of, well, it looked like they're from Asia, but I can't really tell. So, but it dawned upon me that maybe in the wrong area. So I turned to one of I think the gal sitting next to me, I go, hey, this may be a really weird question, but whose wedding is this? And she looks at me kind of funny. She goes, well, it's so-and-so and such and such. And I'm like, I need to go. So I excuse, they're like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm in the wrong wedding. So I excuse myself. I leave. Finally, just go right down the hallway to the other reception hall. I go into the next one over. I'm like, okay, I definitely recognize a few people here. I'm at the right place now. And they were just ready to get started. I was there right in the nick of time. So then after the ceremony ended, We all walk outside, we all shake hands and take pictures and everything. As we're doing that, I see the other group coming out of their ceremony, right? So I go walk over there, and then the friends I made friends with, they're like, "Oh, where'd you go?" I'm like, "Well, I was in the wrong place." And I said, "Hey, thanks for being awesome with me. Thanks for being cool with me. If you ever decide to like flip through those pictures that we all took, you can point at me and say, that idiot crashed the wrong wedding." And we can all have a good laugh about it afterwards. So it was all innocent. It was all good fun. But that was the day when I crashed the wrong wedding.
Well, you didn't really win a stupid prize because you made friends out of that.
That's true. Yeah, win-win, right?
So how did you mistake a fraternity rush for a question about your heritage?
Okay. This is the first story in the book, which I think sets the pace nicely for the rest of the stories. So I decided to leave the corporate life and go to college. University of Las Vegas here in Nevada, UNLV, was very appealing to me. Why? Because Hollywood promised me those awesome college years, right? Me being a little bit older, coming out of the military, I think I was 24, 25 years old. I was promised by Hollywood these great, fun, college days with parties and good experiences and good memories, right? So I think it was my second semester in, I decided to join a fraternity because, as one does, you want to have a good time. You're told, hey, Greek life is the way to go. So I show up to this event where there's a bunch of brothers of the fraternity and a bunch of potential future brothers, right? The pledges, the future pledges of the fraternity. So I sit down at this round table. Shirt and tie, right, as a semi-formal event. And the guy next to me, he must have been a brother of the fraternity. He turns to me and he goes, "Hey, are you Russian?" And I thought the question was a little odd. First of all, he didn't know I was German. Why would he ask me of my heritage? And I said, "No, actually, I'm German." And he starts laughing. He goes, "Man, this guy's got jokes." He's like prodding the friend next to him. He's like, "Hey, man, this guy's got jokes. Listen to this. Here, man, he said he was German when I asked him if he was Russian." He's like, "Oh, that's funny." And I completely, the joke went completely over my head, right? I don't know why that was funny. I don't know why you asked me if I was Russian. None of this stuff made any sense to me. And he says, no, seriously, bro, are you Russian? And I go, "No, seriously, man, I'm 100% German. I don't know why you keep asking me that." And he says, "Oh, you're funny, dude. You're funny." And I go, "I don't." And I think he saw the despair in my eyes, and he finally realized this guy clearly has no idea why this is funny. He goes, "Oh no, dude, are you rushing?" And I go, "I don't know what that means." He goes, "Are you rushing?" Okay, the term is when you want to try out for a fraternity, you're rushing. You're rushing the fraternity, right? Like the verb rush. And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, that makes a lot more sense now. Yes, I am rushing the fraternity. Yes, I am." And then after we got a good laugh, he goes, Why did you think I asked you if you're Russian?" I go, "I don't know." I was just as bewildered as you were by that question. It made no sense.
Yeah, one accent sounds the same as another one.
Russian, right? When you say, "Are you Russian?"
Yeah.
Well, I'm German.
Accent could be German.
Right?
It's on the other side of the world.
That's right.
The United
over
States.
there.
Americans
it's not the U.S. It's outside the U.S.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. People in the United States don't tend to be that great at geography unless it involves a war.
Yeah, or oil, or TikTok trends or whatever.
Yes.
Don't get me started.
So your book tackles everything from awkward cultural misunderstandings, like the one you just explained, to the wild adventures of military life. So what inspired you to write your book?
Yeah. So I think, so it's always been a bit of a passion project, like a labor of love. I realized that I was telling the same 20 stories over and over and over, right? And just like a comedian doing a bit, once you tell the same story over and over and over, just like in your personal life, you get the timing down, you get the punchline right, you get all the things that make a good story, you get all those things kind of dialed in. And I realized that, hey, these stories, for the most part, are always fairly entertaining. There is almost always some sort of, like a aha moment where someone can say, I can take something away from that, right? There's some sort of introspective realization after that, hopefully, right? And as I kind of unpacked the stories I was telling and some of the opinions I had, and I do have an opinion on a lot of things if you couldn't tell by now. But there are some more serious chapters in the book, right, where I talk about some self-realizations and some self-improvement that I had to undergo to become the person I am today. And there are some times when I'm quite vulnerable in the stories that I tell, right? So it's not just all fun and games. It's Andy being Andy, right? And I'm pretty open in certain parts of it where it's like, that took a little bit of courage too to write about some things that are not easy to talk about. And as I kind of noodled on the stories, kind of molded over, I thought, hey, maybe there's enough here to actually write a book. And I started writing down as the topics came to me, as I would share these stories, I would make a note, oh, talk about this topic. Oh, talk about that short story. Because you can't just bring them out in one setting. Like it takes time for you to remember them, right? And as I start putting them together, as I start forming the words and the stories and the paragraphs, I came to, I think it was at the 100-page threshold, I thought to myself, I have something here. My worst fear, not the worst fear, I have other fears, but one of the frustrations I would have had was, hey, you put all your effort into this book and it's 60 pages. That's not a book, that's a pamphlet, so I wanted to have something a little bit more meat to it. And like I said, once I crossed the 100-page threshold, ended up becoming like 160 pages. And I thought to myself, I got something here. And I'm really happy with the result. I'm proud of what I've done. And it took about 2.5 years from start to finish. Now that's also with 3 months off here, 4 months off there. Like it came in bursts, right? It came in waves. But then the last push to get it all done, like I was glued to it. I saw the finish line and saw the light at the end of the proverbial tunnel, and I just pushed through it. And I got it published, and I'm happy with the result. So here we are.
Nice. All right, I've got a couple more questions about stories that are contained in the book. I want to hear more details.
100%.
All right, so this one first. Chipotle. In line at Chipotle. How did you witness the beginnings of a divorce?
Okay, so Chipotle still is one of my more favorite places to go to eat, right? And if you've ever been to Chipotle, there's almost always a line, right? And you kind of get to do some people watching of the people in front of you, sometimes even people behind you. So as I was standing in line waiting for my turn to tell the person what I wanted, I saw this middle-aged woman with her two daughters, right? These daughters were, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years old. That was my guess. No idea. No, it doesn't really matter for the sake of the story. And one of the girls was playing with a hair tie. She was kind of pulling it and playing with it and twisting it and bending it. And it caught her mom's attention. And she goes, "What do you got there, honey?" She goes, "A hair tie." And she goes, "Where'd you get that?" And she goes, "Daddy's car."
Oh.
Her eyes lit up so big. So I don't know what the context is or was. I don't know what happened after the fact, but I think I may have witnessed the beginnings of a divorce.
Wow. Well, at least you weren't the cause.
Not that time, no. It's like I jokingly tell people when we pass like a pregnant lady, I always point and say, "Nope, that's not me, not my fault. Nope, that wasn't me."
All right, I got to hear about one more story before we go.
Sure.
I know they say you're not supposed to talk about what happens in Vegas. You're supposed to stay there. Okay. But we're going to talk about something that happened in Vegas because I think I know where we're going with this.
Okay, go ahead.
How one man's behavior messed things up for everybody else.
Okay. So, background. I was dating a girl who wasn't old enough to drink yet. She was old enough to be an adult, but she wasn't old enough to drink yet. Okay. That in itself, not that big of a deal, right? But the issue that we had was that me and my friends would like to go to the clubs, the nightlife that Vegas has to offer is second to none. And the problem is that even with a fake ID, these the security at these clubs, they're really, really good at what they do. They have to touch, I think, at least 1,000 IDs before they can even work on these certain jobs, right? And they should be able to spot a fake from a mile away. And my girlfriend at the time, she had a fake, a really good fake, but it was still a fake. So we tried one day to bring her into the club with a fake ID. Security looked at it for literally 2 seconds, like, "Nope, like you can step out of line or we can make this into a bigger deal." We're like, "All right, let's just step out of line and go from there," right? That's probably the lowest. How should I put it? That's probably the easiest getaway you can get if they spot a fake ID. They can be difficult, and they can say, "Cool, I'm going to hold on to it until until the police gets here," and you can plead with them to get it back. Now it's technically still your property. They still technically can't hold on to it. You can still say, "Look, it's my property, whether it's fake or not. It's mine," and take it and walk away. But again, depends on the security person, depends on the day, depends on their mood, right? So just as a FYI, if you want to try to get away with that, it's still yours, whether it's fake or not. It's still your property. Okay. Anyway, so. Try getting her in, didn't work that night. Well, this is awkward, right? I mean, me and my friends would go in and have a good time, and she would just be waiting outside or go home or "I'll see you tomorrow," right? It made for an awkward situation, right? So then I thought, okay, what can I do to get her and her friend into these clubs, right? So rubbed my two remaining brain cells together, and I realized that the return stamp. So when you walk into a club or like most like adult establishments, they give you a stamp on your wrist. And that means that you can come in and out of the venue all night. You show them the stamp. If you've been in before, they see the stamp. They say good to go, and you walk right in. So I thought, well, how difficult would it be to make the stamp like outside the club and then just stamp, my girlfriend and her friend, and then just walk in with the stamp of the night. I mean, in my head, it was brilliant, right? So one night, we're going to try this out. So we went to the room at the Cosmopolitan because the club we wanted to go to, Marquee, was right there down on the second floor. And I remember getting like this rubber block used for like arts and crafts. I got a bunch of X-Acto knives with like carving, chisel heads or whatever you want to call them, right? And I figured, look, I can make almost anything. I'm pretty handy with a hammer. I can do things with a screwdriver. Using an X-Acto knife on a block of rubber shouldn't be that more difficult, right? So we sent one guy in, told him, hey, get the stamp, and then once you're done, just literally turn right back around and come back upstairs or come back up to the room. So he did. And I looked at the stamp. I remember in my head, it was like one of the most complicated, like intricate designs. It was like this weird sunburst shaped design with like these little intricate areas in between. I'm like, why did they have to pick the most complicated, the most difficult stamp for this particular night, right? So I sat there. I took a picture with it on my phone, and I sat there just sitting there carving this block of rubber, right? I had to guesstimate the size, had to guesstimate a lot of things, right? In the meantime, we had like 8, 9, 10 people in the room drinking, partying, pre-gaming and all that. And I'm like, hey, Andy, how we doing? I'm like, I don't remember we're doing. I'm not quite sure how it's going to work, but A for effort, right? So I finally got done about, I don't know, it must have taken maybe only 20 minutes. In my head, I'm sure it was like an hour. But anyway, we get done with it. I look at the stamp and I go, well, it's not great. Like there are definitely some mistakes I made. There are some lines I didn't quite connect, but let's give it a shot. So we dipped it in ink, put it on someone's wrist, and then we held the wrist with a fake stamp up to the wrist with a real stamp. And we're like, does that look about right? And they're like, well, you squint a little bit, and if you don't know what you're looking for, yeah, I'll buy that. I'm like, okay, well, let's give it a shot. Like we're already here, might as well, right? So it was a good group of us that walked in. I think it was 2 or 3 of the guys and gals that didn't have ID, or weren't old enough to be at a club. We gave them the stamp, and we were like, all right, we're gonna walk in pairs of 2s. One person with the right stamp, one person with a fake one, walking in pairs, about 20 seconds in between, so not to like make it obvious or whatever. And sure enough, we all walked in. We literally just held our wrists up. The guy looked at him. He says, yep, good to go. You walk right in. So now keep this in mind, right? You show this return stamp. You don't stand in line. You don't pay cover. You don't have ID checked. Okay. Those are all some pretty big perks when it comes to going out and experiencing nightlife in Las Vegas. So once I realized that this worked, of course, I had to weaponize it, right? I couldn't just leave it at a crappy block that I get from arts and crafts. No, I made this like industrial grade, right? So I ended up buying like this Martha Stewart like stamp making kit where you get like this gel pack and this UV light thing. It's this whole shebang of like making semi-professional stamps, right? And I kind of get the process down better and better to the point where I got so good at it that at the height of it, and mind you, this whole operation lasted for a few months, and I'll get to how it ended in a minute. At the height of it, I got so good with it that if I didn't have the stamp, and I already had a bunch of them because I made them for, a couple of weeks leading up to this, and they changed the stamps all the time, but they only had so many stamps they pick from, right? So their collection was only maybe like 6, 7, 8 stamps, and they just rotate them, right? Once you have them all, you have them, right? There was nothing special about them.
Collect the full set.
Exactly. Collectibles, that's right. I still have them here somewhere. I can actually, there's a picture of them in the book. So if you go to the right page, there'll be a picture of them in there. So at the height of it, I got so good that if you sent me the stamp of the night and I did not have it, it would take me literally about half an hour. I would Photoshop it out, print it out, the whole gel pack, the whole Martha Stewart stamp printing, Dewey key, right? The whole process. And I got so good at it that I would have like an actual like physical stamp that you could dip in ink and go cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And the word spread pretty quickly. I was in college. I was in a fraternity. So, shenanigans like that would make their ways around to the different groups. So it got to the point where I would have people, at one point, I think there was like 30 people at the house, pre-gaming, getting their drink on, being loud and obnoxious, waiting for the stamp to get done. Because look, if you can save yourself $60 in cover charge, don't have to wait in line again, and you have to check for ID. Those are perks, right? Especially when you have a big group want to go to the same place. So They would leave, either 10 or 20 bucks a piece on the table, $10 for a slow night, 20 bucks for a busy night. And that would pay for my drinks, for the night. So, it was a win-win. So then the way it all came crashing down was I had two female friends hit me up on a Wednesday. They said, "Hey, we want to go to such and such club. This is the stamp. Do you have this one?" Like I said, "Sure, no problem. Come on over." Came on over, stamped them. I said, "It's on the house. You girls enjoy." So they leave. And about half an hour later, they give me a call. They're like, "We can't get in." Like, why? What's up? Did the stamp not work? Every so often, the stamp wouldn't work. The color wouldn't be right. The size would be off. And someone was paying attention. They're like, "No, you can't come in with this." And they would just have to leave, right? No big deal. But they said, "No, we can't go in. We can't go in." Why? Why not? What happened? Well, they're checking IDs at the re-entry line. I'm like, "Well, I can't help that. That's outside my skill set, right? I don't know what to tell you." So after that, so what must have happened, in my opinion, someone got smart. Someone told someone that shouldn't have been told. Rumor goes it was a disgruntled ex-girlfriend of mine who found out and blew the whistle. Who knows? Don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know all the details of how it kind of came to a halt. But long story short, the clubs found out, and they all talk to each other, right? So once one security department of a club finds something out, they do communicate, right? They talk to each other, and literally overnight they checked IDs at the re-entry line, and they still do that to this day. So that's how I say I messed it up for everybody else. So if you're used to just going in from back in the day without ID check, and they check it now, that was absolutely my fault.
That was Andy.
Yes, 100%.
All right, Andy. So for our final question today, what advice would you like to share with the listeners?
I think when you play stupid games, you win stupid. No. Okay. How about this? I think life has a really interesting way of exposing itself to you, but you also have to take the chance and take those opportunities when they come to you, right? There's an old saying that said something like, when you come to a road in the fork, you take it. Case in point, I was traveling in Europe several years ago, and one night I was ready to call it quits, go to the Airbnb that I had, and turn in for the night. And then something told me, "Hey, there's a wine bar right here. Why don't you just stop in and have a drink, and then you can go to the Airbnb from there." Sure. So I go inside, have a drink, start conversing and socializing with the people already inside. There was 2 couples from the U.S. And that night, and I'll spare you the details. There are more details in the book if you want to read that story, but that night turned into probably one of the most entertaining, fun nights I've had on a Europe trip. So again, I think the message, if you condense it all into one short little snippet, is life has a lot to offer, but you have to take the chance. Nothing will happen to you when you sit at home and watch YouTube and do the doom scrolling, right? Life beckons, but you have to answer the call.
That's a good piece of advice to end this conversation. Our guest is author of Play Stupid Games, Win Stupid Prizes. His name is Andy Dietrich. Andy, thank you so much for being here today. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Melvin, thank you for having me. If I can do the quick plug for the last bit that we have here. If you go to either you can punch in the name, either my name or the name of the book into Amazon, or if it's just too much to remember, if you go to andysbook.com, one word, andysbook.com, there's a picture of me holding it up. There's a link to Amazon, and I would totally appreciate your patronage. So if you liked some or any of the stories that I shared with you, I think you'll enjoy the rest of them.
Well, I can do you one better. I can make it easier for them. I'm going to put the links on my website. So please go to my website at podcastreallife.com for more information about Andy and the things that we discussed today, including links to his books and to his website. So that'll make it easy for you.
That's great.
That's it for today's episode of Stories from Real Life. Join us again next time for another chance to learn from each other. Until then, don't forget to shine your light wherever you go.
That was Stories from Real Life. Join us again next week for another great storytelling journey. See you next time.